Every once in a while, the legal system gets in the way of good cybersecurity, and this is one of those times. Raise your hand if you know Troy Hunt and Have I Been Pwned? I think most of the people watching this video have heard both those names before. Well, Troy is a good law-abiding Australian citizen, and it turns out some Australian courts have some interesting perspectives about cybersecurity, some of which are completely hampering people from understanding how their data might have been impacted in a breach. Troy rarely puts a whole lot of snark in his blogs, and this one is full of it. It's like, hey, we're doing security through thoughts and prayers. So this is what happened. We've got a law firm in Australia called HWL Ebsworth. I can literally see the monocle on the logo. This law firm says that they were granted an injunction. They were a victim of ransomware in 2023, and they were granted an injunction which basically says the following. It's restraining the hackers from ALF-V or Black Hat, a hacker group, from publishing the HWL data on the internet, sharing it with any person, or using the information for any reason other than obtaining legal advice from the court's order. So we're basically saying to the criminal hacking organization, it would be illegal for you to leak the information that you illegally obtained in the first place. This is like obtaining a court order that says, no, Mr. Drug Dealer, you can't sell the drugs that you illegally produced or procured from somewhere else. We're talking to people that are already firmly breaking the law, right? And then just saying, by the way, here's like another legal hurdle for you to jump. The hackers responded in kind. And then, of course, dumped the huge trove of data. Clearly, as Troy says, clearly criminals aren't going to pay any attention whatsoever to an injunction. But this legal construct has reached far beyond just the bad guys. And here's the point of today's video. The injunction will also assist in limiting the dissemination of the exfiltrated material by enabling this law firm to inform online platforms who are at risk of publishing the material. In other words, the data is off limits to the good guys. If you're one of the people that did not raise your hand at the start of the video that knows who Troy Hunt and Have I Been Pwned is, Have I Been Pwned is a fantastic service. This is not sponsored. This is just a fantastic website. You can put your email in and figure out which data breaches that email was associated with. So what Troy does and has been doing for a long time, I've met Troy many, many years ago. We met each other at an OWASP event in Amsterdam. We knew each other online before that. Troy was just collecting as much data breach data as he could, and then he realized, hey, I could just make this searchable without leaking the actual sensitive parts of the data. Basically just saying, yes or no, your data is in this breach. So you subscribe to Have I Been Pwned, you put your email address in. When any new data breach is made public and that is actually leaked on the internet and Troy can get his hands on it and integrated in this database, they will let you know, yes, you were part of this breach, which is fantastic for people to stay on top of which data of theirs has leaked all over the internet. So I've put in tons of old and new email addresses into this, and I can go back, way back and be like, oh, I was definitely part of that Equifax leak, or I was part of this, or I was part of that. And I can respond accordingly, whether that's rotating a password, whether that's going and deleting some data off of that, rotating whatever secrets I can. It's just good for all of us to understand. Well, this new court order is basically tying Troy's hands behind his back because it's a court in Australia. Troy and Have I Been Pwned are Australian. He's saying journalists, security firms, and yes, even Have I Been Pwned are all impacted by injunctions like this. So the most recent example and why he's writing this blog is Qantas, the airline, just had a breach, and they put out a injunction very similar to that law firm. Troy is a loyal Qantas customer, so he had a feeling that his and his family's information was in there. And he's like, hey, besides me running Have I Been Pwned, I'm also a loyal Qantas customer, and I'm interested to see if my data is in there. So I was particularly interested when they applied for and were granted a court injunction of their own. Why? What possible upside does this provide? Because by now, it's pretty clear what's going to happen to the data. And here's a screenshot from Telegram with the hackers talking about the Qantas leak. Then here's some, this Twitter account basically posts all dark web forum posts claiming hacks. So It's like 70% noise. A lot of this breach forum stuff isn't confirmed. This one is a confirmed hack, so this is good information out of this Twitter account. Just FYI, if you follow a lot of these that say like so-and-so breached a gazillion accounts, a lot of that stuff's not confirmed. So Troy basically goes on to say like, hey, of course the hackers are going to wind up leaking this. They don't care about the court injunction. Just me and my lawyers are going to care about this court injunction. Troy is saying, without wanting to give too much credit to the criminals, they're right about the media outlets. An injunction would have had meaningful impact on the Ashley Madison coverage a decade ago, where the press happily outed the presence of famous people in the breach. But clearly the Qantas data is nowhere near as newsworthy, and I can imagine a headline going much beyond a significant points balance of a certain politicians. The data just isn't that interesting. The injunction is only effective against people who meet the following criteria: people who know there's an injunction in place from Australia, and people who are law-abiding. He also mentions an asterisk about the Australia part. This is from a lawyer. He said it would depend on which country and whether it had a reciprocal agreement with Australia, like the UK. And also, who are you trying to enforce it against? Then it's up to the court in that country to determine. But as this is an injunction, so not for a debt against a specific person, it's almost impossible. You can't just register a foreign judgment somehow against the world at large. So we don't even know if this just impacts people in Australia. Basically, it would be legally sticky if, say a Have I Been Pwned competitor that wasn't in Australia were to post it. It might also run into some legal situations around this. So Troy's trying to figure out, well, what does this court injunction even do? What does it protect? So even if the injunctions might not impact the hackers, because obviously they're going to ignore it, they can provide ancillary benefits in relation to the further dissemination of hacked information by legitimate individuals and organizations. Depending on the terms, it might also assist with the recovery of relevant insurance policies and reduce the risk of securities class actions being brought. So Troy's speculation, and I tend to agree, is he's envisioning the lawyers at Qantas standing up in court when they're defending against the inevitable class action and saying, well, Your Honor, we did everything we could. We even got an injunction. Completely agree, right? They're just like pushing the legal buttons. This is like, we offered free credit monitoring. It's like, okay, who cares? Troy talked to another lawyer about another data breach that was successfully granted an injunction. The lawyer said they just wanted to, assure customers they've done everything possible. But here's the problem. Are the customers even going to know about this one? Say Qantas's notification gets locked in spam or whatever it is, but say that they were a subscriber to Have I Been Pwned, they're not going to find out about this. Troy's point, I feel pretty comfortable arguing that the primary beneficiary of the injunction is the shareholder rather than the customer. And it's a good point, right? It's like the people that hacked the data and leaked the data don't care about this injunction. It's out there. And now all we're doing is limiting things like Have I Been Pwned from being able to tell people that their information and what information is out there. I can hear people saying, well, what about, Qantas is going to do their own breach notification. And Troy takes that on. So granted, they obviously sent out disclosure, but I'd argue that the notice coming from Have I Been Pwned carries a different gravitas. It's one thing to be told, we had a security incident, and quite another to learn that your data is now in the circulation to the extent that it's been sent to us. This is a great point, right? Like you get a lot of these. I mean, look at the Discord video I just made recently. They came out and said, a small number of individuals' government IDs were impacted. And then the hackers came out and said, hey, we got 2 million line items in this database. Then Discord came out and said, actually, we have 70,000 things. And then the hacker said, yeah, okay, they're right about the 70,000 thing. But they were forced into that part of the disclosure. I think, Discord did a relatively good job on breach response on that whole thing. But who's to say that Qantas Airlines breach notification is as transparent or as detailed versus knowing for sure, because Hack in the Box is pulling the data off of the leaked dark web site. This is what the threat actors would use to steal your identity or do whatever the heck they're going to do. That's the same data that Hack in the Box is working off of. So them coming and saying, hey, this is what we found in the bad guys pile of data versus Qantas sending you some lawyer generic email that just says, we had a security incident. You're one of our customers. We think that maybe you were impacted. Okay, this part's really funny. So Qantas gives a bunch of advice, right? So this is in their breach notification, splash page, their PR splash page about their breach. They say, hey, stay informed about this. Go to ScamWatch or cyber.gov.au or ID Care or Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. And Troy's like, these are all really great. points, by the way. And let's click on all of these. And who do all of those websites recommend that you go to? Oh, Have I Been Pwned? And then cyber.gov.au says, oh, go check out Have I Been Pwned? And ID Care says, oh, make sure you visit Have I Been Pwned? And the OAIC says, oh, make sure you check out Have I Been Pwned? So Qantas is saying, hey, go to all these places. All of these places are saying, go to Have I Been Pwned? And Have I Been Pwned is saying, well, based on this court injunction, we cannot even include this Qantas data breach information. So Have I Been Pwned is useless as far as advice for this particular breach. Thoughts and prayers. Troy posted an update on this one today. This is why it came back across my desk. Troy, listening to his lawyers, is not touching this one. So he hasn't even been able to ingest the breach in his own curiosity. I've not accessed the data myself, but Troy's got a lot of friends. And they've pulled the data, and they can confirm that him and his family members are present in that data. Clearly, the injunction has been proven to be extremely limited in its ability to stop the spread of data, as he's getting texts about it. Further, as a Qantas customer, I've not heard anything from them in relation to my data having now been publicly released. So they came out with a breach disclosure, but they have not said anything about, hey, we didn't pay the ransom, and now your stuff is actually out there in the hands of the bad guys. Guys, this is not the first time that we've seen the courts get in their own way when it comes to the public good of cybersecurity and information being disseminated. I did a video a few months ago, Time's a Flat Circle, about OpenAI getting a court order about not being able to delete users' data when they request that it's deleted. So they got a court order that actually put them at odds with other local regulations, like in places like California that say you must delete people's data, or in the EU that says you must delete people's data when they request it. And due to some court thing, a judge said, hey, you're not allowed to delete any information. You can go watch that video. So a lot of times we get courts getting in their own way. This is the most recent example. Go check out Have I Been Pwned? Troy's awesome. It's a great service. It's free to use for like you and me. If you're a company, you can subscribe to the API. And this is something like, okay, side note, tangent, sorry. This is the end of the video. There's like 15% of you still watching. I see a lot of conversations when it comes to things like credential stuffing, saying that this wasn't a data breach. This was credential stuffing. If you don't know what credential stuffing is, people taking data from breaches like this, username and password data specifically, and then spraying it across other websites. This is why cybersecurity pros say don't use the same password across multiple sites, because if one site gets hacked and your password is leaked, they can then retry that across a bunch of different places, that email and password combination. So that's credential stuffing, is like take all these like known accounts that were, existed on another site and then try them on your site. And there was things like the 23andMe breach, where like all the millions of people's DNA information was stolen. I called it a breach and people got on me. They're like, this wasn't a breach. This was credential stuffing. It was like 11 million accounts compromised or something like that. Don't quote me on that. It was a big number. I forget how many. It was a ton of accounts. My point was, hey, credential stuffing, especially at that degree, you can't throw your hands up as a company and just say, well, our users were reusing their usernames and passwords on my site. There's nothing I could have done about that. There's absolutely tons of stuff that you can do against that. How about, as a security team, you sign up for something like Have I Been Pwned? And when credentials get leaked into that, you try that. You test those leaks against your known users. And if you get any hits, you credential stuff yourself first, basically. And if you get any hits, you force password reset that user. It's like a super obvious one. Or, hey, how about the millions of websites that I've gone to? I'm exaggerating, hundreds, dozens, the tons of websites that I've gone to that if I've logged in from a new location, all of a sudden they say, hey, we don't recognize this device. We don't recognize this location. We're going to push back on your authentication. Can you like tap the app on your phone, or we're going to send an email to your email. Can you confirm this code? Whatever, some forced two-factor auth on like a new location, new device. There's plenty of layers that companies can do when it comes to credential stuffing. Have I Been Pwned is a great layer. So I will stand on the hill that absolutely credential stuffing, especially en masse, that's a breach. Just because they didn't use a 0 day to walk in doesn't mean that they should have been able to log into tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people's accounts because it was credential stuffing. All right, side soapbox over. Thanks for watching. Do all the YouTube things down below. Share this video with your mom. Moms love me, and follow for more cybersecurity news.